It'll save my sanity, which is priceless,
your
Richard.
HEB bill is going to be cheaper, so which is insane.
Yeah.
And so how do you acquire more clients? Is it just mostly word of mouth network, or?
We work strictly by referral. Really what I tell people is I want to show up and provide value in your planning for wealth. So that means annually doing kind of a recap of where your house is going, what your financial goals are, where we can help you succeed in that. And all I ask in return is that you refer us to like-minded people, right? Good people refer good people. So it allows my database to stay really awesome. A lot of people know each other. So I'm able to host client events, and it's not there's one group, there's one group. Everybody kind of has a general feeling and vibe for each other. And so we really just found over the years working by referral for us is the way to succeed, way to deepen relationships, have more meaningful relationships with people, and to show up for them with their largest asset. So
you don't handle this all by yourself. You have to have a big team, I'm assuming.
I do. Yeah. And I was telling somebody the other day, in 24 years, I've got the strongest team I've ever had. Minus my husband. I have to whip him into shape every now and again. But we have a total of 6 members on our team. We have, we've kind of embraced the virtual assistant concept that I've actually done that now for years. And before it was trendy to do, but really find that that's great resource for doing paperwork. And then I have 2 internal staff members that kind of just help handle day-to-day calls, problem shooting, things like that. And then Michelle and my husband are both out in the field checking on properties, signs and lock boxes, showing our units. Michael definitely oversees a lot of our renovation side of things. He was a builder for 40 years, so he's got those eyes.
That's good. That's a good asset to have.
Yeah, and he's fluent. I'm working on it every day.
That's right. You're still learning how to speak Espanol?
Pre-ply every day for 45 minutes.
How's that going?
Oh,
Do you want to practice at all?
No, thank you. Not on broadcast YouTube. I really thought it was going to be easier. Yeah. I really thought, 45 minutes every day is such a commitment. Like if you work out 45 minutes a day, you should see results. Yeah. Apparently not on Spanish.
But do you have to kind of speak it though? Try to just have conversations with people that's how I learned just at an early age, because I grew up with my mom and my stepdad was from Mexico, so they spoke a lot of Spanish, and then my grandmother just spoke Spanish. So it's like you're kind of almost forced to, and you slowly. And actually, we learned a lot of the good Spanish from my stepdad because he was from like Guadalajara down, and so there's
more
just proper, not the Spanglish, that you get from the border towns. Yeah, I grew up in McAllen, so a lot of the Spanish was just a lot of that Spanglish with the bad words mixed in.
Well, my husband will be up in the morning while I'm doing class, and he'll hear me, and I'll ask him a question, he'll give an answer, and she's like, "No, that's border Spanish. That's not." That's Spanglish, Michael. That's not. Don't be teaching Cortney that.
There's subtle things or little things. And actually, what's really cool is when I started off, one of my biggest clients was a gentleman from Mexico, international, and he had a lot of properties. And I met him. He called. He was referred to me. This was like literally like a year into me starting off on my own. But he called because he had gotten referred to me, and he was speaking to me in Spanish right off the bat. And then I just talked to him. He's like, and he's telling me in Spanish, he's got a house at Dominion he wants me to go look at to do some work. And I said, sure. And he goes, can you go right now? Because a lot of the thing with the internationals, it's like, it's their time, no matter what time it is. So I was like, sure. So I follow him, and he goes to where the main, he hadn't even gotten his key to the house yet. So I think it was whatever, the HOA there at the entrance back then. And so we park. And then he goes, just get in my car. And then he takes me to the house, tells me what he wants. And I'm talking to him in Spanish the whole time. Right. For the most part, what I feel is proper. And then we get back out, and he goes, okay, when can you start? He's telling me in Spanish again, right? And I'm like, as soon as you want. I just got to get you some numbers, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, what do you think it's going to be? I'm like, I don't know. Is it around this? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, look, hang on to the keys, send me an estimate, and then get started right away. Yeah. And he just gave me the keys to get going. But I think the advantage was the fact that I had that knowledge of the Spanish, and I was able to kind of communicate with him and just really relate to him where he felt like he could trust me right off the bat. And that actually built a little relationship for a good year and doing some work. And I've had a bunch of customers that have fed off of him just because I was able to communicate. It's just an interesting dynamic because in any business, you obviously have to speak English. English is some people aren't even articulate in English and they speak English. It's so important, but having that extra language sometimes could be beneficial depending on the industry.
And for me, it was being able to communicate with our trades. Two of my staff were bilingual, but to be able to go show a property or talk to a homeowner or anything like that in Spanish, it was super important for me to be able to bridge that gap, right? To have that communication with them. And at least, if nothing else, they know I'm trying, right? I'm making the effort, and there might be a little, misunderstanding here or there. I thought somebody the other day I was at an appointment and I had taken Michael, but I was like, let me see how much of this I can navigate, right? And I totally misunderstood. She was talking about the sprinkler and I thought she was talking about her husband was broken. And I was like, oh, okay. But she was saying that her husband had installed the broken sprinkler and I missed the whole installed portion of it.
Her husband was broken.
I was like, what's wrong with your husband?
I think you called the wrong person out here.
I was like, I'm not a therapist, but I feel like a therapist sometimes in property management because, the reality is people buy, sell, or rent for usually stressful situations, right? Job changes, had a baby, got divorced, had a death. And so all of what happens in the resale side happens in the property management side, right? And my stepdad jokingly always tells me that property management is like a 365-day option period, right? There's that constant communication going on.
You're on call, right?
You're on call all the time until you get downtime. But then there are times where it's like, okay, make the phone stop, especially, July when ACs are out and, you can't get to people fast enough. And so it is definitely going back to the trust aspect of things. Changing my business model and only working by referral allowed where I go to a property, right? There's already a built-in layer of trust because they know we've taken really good care of their friends or family. So when I show up, I'm not trying to sell my service or sell us and then explain property management. Like property management is a huge animal. So by taking out all this time to this is why we're great and just laser focus in on, hey, here are some expectations you should have. Here's when your payment should come in. Here's what the law says about evictions. It allows people not to feel so overwhelmed by the volume of information coming at them. So it's really been, number one, I think allowed me to have a better feel for what my homeowners want and expect because I'm spending that time with them in explanation mode as opposed to sales mode. So it's been a great run. I've really appreciated doing property management. I believe in real estate, obviously. I've got a 11. She just turned 11 on Friday. 11 and a 15-year-old. And so I keep asking them who's going to take over in 20 years. And they both keep looking at me like I have a third eye. So my big one is definitely more of the interior designer of the family, which my grandmother was. And so my little one is very, very strict and disciplined. And so I think she's going to make a great property manager because I tell people, property management gets sticky when it gets personal. So the more on the let's follow the lease you can do. For anybody who's contemplating self-management, I give them the piece of advice as treat this as a business. It's not a personal relationship. If rent's due on the 1st and it's late on the 3rd, then it's late on the 4th, or whatever those rules and boundaries are. And a lot of times we step in where people are renting to their brothers or their sisters or their kids because they're like, look, we don't want to hear it. And we know if they're paying you, they're going to pay on time. If they pay us, they'll get around to it. Or the repairs, right? We see this a lot with property management. Somebody will call in and say, oh, my toilet's clogged. Typically, it's because the tenants put something down the drain or the resident has that they shouldn't. And so for us, all of our vendors are trained of, hey, was this something the tenant caused? Did this just happen? Or is there a bigger issue we need to try and triage? And so for us, it's very systematized, right? You send out, if you're the homeowner and you go out and do your own repair, it's like, well, I found G.I. Joe. And then there's just this element of, well, did you put him down there? Things like that. So the cleaner you can keep it, the better. Just like a 401k, right? You don't typically manage your own 401k. And I tell all my clients, having a piece of real estate is just like a 401k. You got to put money into it to get money out, right? It's always going to see a level of growth. If you look at any 10-year window, you just have to make sure that, hey, when times like now, rents are a little off, you got to compensate, or we got to plan for carpet every 5 to 7 years. Or, as you know, dealing with me, we're a big LVP fan. We have gotten out of the carpet game. Carpet just doesn't have the longevity. People with allergies and pets and things like that. So we're slowly converting all of our properties to LVP for wear and tear.
So how have you evolved over the years and with your experience? I mean, obviously when you started off, your mom kind of said, here, take it. Did you kind of get some guidance under her for several years? So you just kind of took it and ran with it?
It was a lot of trial by error in the beginning. And, back then we didn't have the technology we have now. Sure. Back in the day when I would pay 100 owners, it would take me 8 full hours to pay, 100 owners, right? Doing all those statements on Excel and everything. And now, I can pay 350 owners in less than 8 hours. And so, the other thing I've learned over the years, I find friends will call me and ask me, and I just tell them, you do the right thing and it typically works out, right? You have your Texas property code. You have your Texas licensing for your real estate license. You have to be a licensed realtor to do property management for anybody else. But beyond that, when it gets in the gray area, I try and find the win-win. And there's not a law for everything, right? There's a lot of gray areas in property management. And so I've just found over the years, if you can kind of come together, negotiate things out, both parties will be, okay with that decision, right?
You're like a mediator, basically, at the end of the day. I mean, you're going to favor the owner at the end of the day.
Right. We represent the owner and the owner's best interest. But I always tell my owners, too, there is a common ground, right? There is a point in which we're depending on a tenant to take care of your asset. And so if you're constantly finding yourself nickel and diming them or, coming down on them, it just creates kind of an adversarial relationship, right? I want to get on the education side of things. So when we go to a property and there's a dirty air filter, Michael will say, hey, can I show you how to, change it out? Right. Take it more from like, let me help you as opposed to you didn't change your air filter, right? And so, the third time we're doing it, we're the tone is changing. And most people get after the third time that you're your own worst enemy in that scenario because your AC is not working when you're not changing your filter. But I think for the most part, people have good intentions and they want to take care of the property. And so we do 3 property visits a year. We try and make sure that the home is being maintained, air filters, salt and softeners. There aren't unauthorized pets in properties. I always jokingly say, pets don't get to just hang out for 10 days. That's got to have a pet deposit, pet agreement on file, unless, of course, they're emotional support animals or service animals. But, locking eyes on the property really helps us make sure that it's being maintained. And so I'll never forget, I got into property management and I read this article and it was like, property manager in Almost Ranch hadn't been in home in 5 years. And there's an entire marijuana facility in there, like with grow lights. CPS had caught it because they had just released that technology where they were like doing drone heat. And so they were telling and seeing how much was like when we were doing those new electric meters.
They're like, these guys' filters are very clogged up. It's so hot in there.
Well, they were pulling so much power that CPS actually flagged them. And then CPS was doing like these drone overs and saw how much power the house was pulling. And it was because all these grow lights. And I was like,
so the property manager probably turned a blind eye to that one.
I was like, I am never going to be that property manager where I walk in and, a meth lab's happening or something like that. And I'm like, and if they do it and they're hiding it, good for them, but I didn't want to. So
GSG doesn't stand for grow, sativa grow? No?
That's a new one. No. That's a new one.
I probably shouldn't know what sativa is, but anyway.
It actually stands for Go Spurs Go.
There you go. Is it really?
It does.
No way.
Everybody thinks it's CSG for Cortney Gill, and I'm like, no, it's GSG. When I had to come up with a name quickly, and at the time, we had a coach owner that we property managed for, and I had 2 players in 2 of the properties, and so I was like, Go Spurs Go sounds great. And so, but it's crazy how people are like, what? And I'm like, no, it's really for Go Spurs Go. And so,
I was trying to figure out what that stood for too. So.
Yeah, no, Go Spurs Go.
So you're a big Spurs fan?
I am.